Hi, welcome back to my living room. My name's Erin, I'm a therapist, and today we're going to be analyzing the setting of Severance. Now, Severance is one of my favorite TV shows, and the second season is finally coming out, which means that we're going to be getting answers to questions that we've been waiting for nearly 3 entire years.
It's been 84 years.
So I am thrilled, and because it's coming out, I wanted to do a video analyzing the psychological concepts behind the settings. I want everyone to watch this show, so I'm going to try my best to not include any spoilers, but I do allude to themes in the show that could give away some information, so watch carefully. I don't really think I give anything away specifically, but the themes could convey some of the meaning that I think it's more fun to go in blind, like I did the first time I was watching it. So watch with your own discretion, I suppose. My cats may or may not join me. Their names are Sorrel and Sage. I always introduce them in the videos because they usually find their way onto my lap mid-video. So if you see them, that's who they are. They're wonderful and lovely, and I love them so dearly. The importance of the setting in Severance cannot be understated. It took 4 concept designers to fully come up with the basic idea of the setting, and the way it comes to life is unlike anything else I've ever witnessed in TV or movie. I'm just so excited to talk about it. It's so well done. It is genius level of thought and intention in design. So Severance is directed by Ify McArdle and Ben Stiller, and Ben Stiller is also an executive producer on the show. Yes, that Ben Stiller. Who really deserves credit, though, is the production designer, Jeremy Hindle. He designed all of the set in collaboration with Stiller and Dan Erickson, who's a writer for Severance. I really believe the setting of the show is psychologically meant to make you feel on edge, unsettled, and confused. The setting of the show really serves the meta-narrative that Lumen is a shady company built on the submission of its employees. So the basic premise of Severance is that there is individuals that undergo an operation. It's a controversial operation, but in the operation you get severed. In doing so, you now have 2 selves. You have a self that goes to work called an innie, and a self that is outside of work called an outie. The thing that is really jarring is that the innie and the outie have now no connection to each other. So they know nothing about each other, even though they're the same person. So they all work for this company called Lumen, and throughout the show, Lumen is weird and you have no idea what's going on, and you're trying to figure it out along with the characters. So I'm so excited to be talking about this. I think it's brilliant and well done. And today I am drinking a nice cappuccino in my Ember mug that my sister-in-law got me for Christmas. Shout out Andrea, because these things are so nice. They keep your drink heated. And I needed a warm drink on this very snowy, cold Saturday. Gross. I don't like the snow. All right, let's get into it. The very first scene of the very first episode is constructed so well. It's so alluring, and you start to feel panic as Helly runs around the room. It starts to convey this feeling of claustrophobia. If you look closely, the walls, I think, are supposed to represent padded walls, which are reminiscent of maybe an isolation room in a mental health hospital, which only further conveys this idea of claustrophobia, feeling trapped, feeling panicky. Even if you look at the wood, the slot spacing between them could even be conveyed and reminiscent of like jail cell bars. So the whole message of this space is entrapment. You're supposed to feel on edge. You're supposed to feel panicked when you're watching this, because not only is she panicked, she doesn't know where she is. She's in a room that clearly she can't get out of. But these subtle details add to this psychological angst that you don't recognize until you actually stop and slow down and analyze why. Another thing that I want to point out is that the strangeness of the setting also naturally produces an angst in us as watchers. To provide a setting, especially a work one, that resembles something so familiar but altogether different is really unsettling. To me, it really represents this dreamlike state where something feels close to real but not quite there, and so it results in this really confusing limbo. This limbo-like state leaves us on edge as watchers and helps build suspense. It really represents this idea of uncanny valley, which is a psychological concept where individuals feel on edge or unsettled because something represents something very close to human reality or human likeness, but it's not human or it's not reality. And so it leaves us in the midst of trying to figure out what actually is real, which is confusing and puts us on edge. And our brains certainly don't like, because we like consistency and we like predictability. So it's really, really well done in the show and the setting to make things seem so close to reality, but just not quite there. This is also strewn throughout the entire show, but there's just these small symbolisms of the Severance operation. Like in Mark's apartment, you see this fish tank. It's clearly severed down the middle. There's two different fish on each side. Or this parking lot shot where there's both parking lots are split off into two. Even Mark walking down the stairs right here to the Lumen offices shows that there's this representation of two sides being severed. I think that's a really neat nod that the show does throughout all the episodes, is that they're constantly and subconsciously making you reflect back on this severance operation, which is the whole point of the show. I have a cat on my lap, so I was trying to... Okay, see, this is so cute. This is Sorrel. She is one of the cats that I thought might join us. So say hi, Sorrel. So even you'll observe the expansiveness and the lightness of the building upstairs, which even has real windows and lets in like this beautiful sunlight, which is so starkly contrasted with the harsh fluorescent UV lights down below, which further conveys this idea of coldness and lifelessness. So not to mention the idea of scale here. This setting in the background of this sculpture wall, I'm not sure what you would call that, but Mark walks past it, and later on you learn that that is the Lumen founder. And so as you see Mark walk underneath it, not only is he meant to look minuscule next to it, he's also supposed to walk underneath it, I think, as a representation of submission. Like he is under the force of Lumen. And you could even go a step further and say that his offices are down in the basement. So not only is he like psychologically under Lumen, but he's physically under Lumen as well. As Mark continues, he descends down a series of stairs, and he keeps descending and descending and descending. And this is really subtle, but really smart, because what it's doing is representing like, where is he going? It's this descent into nowhere. And how often in movies or TV shows does a descent downstairs or towards a basement actually result in anything good? So it, as a watcher, psychologically makes you think like, oh, we're going down somewhere and it's probably not going to be good. A great example of this is the movie Parasite, which unfortunately wrecked me and lives rent-free in my brain. But the psychological concepts in that movie are phenomenal. It's so well done. But there's a symbolism of this family, like when they have to go back to their home, they work at a very rich family. So when they go back to their home, they descend these steps further and further and further into, I guess you could call them slums. And so in that movie, the stairs represent this class division. So stairs usually represent a lot of things in movies and TV shows, if you look closely enough. So as Mark enters, he goes through a metal door and then enters into this room where there's metal lights and then there's metal lockers. Even as he pushes in his locker drawer, to me, and this might be a stretch, but to me, this was really reminiscent of like the push-in of a body cadaver in a body refrigerator where they push it into the wall. All of this compiles in our brains because there's a stark contrast from the upstairs where he just came from, that light, airy, open warmness, to all of a sudden this cold darkness. And even there's surrounding walls are stone and gray, further pushing this idea of frigidity. It really represents that where Mark works is not meant to be warm and inviting. It's almost a warning of like, don't come this way. This is cold and dark. The coldness portrayed here offers distance. You don't want to be in this area. It's not enticing and it really screams stay away. All simply because they shifted from like this warmness to this cold metal setting. It's so masterful. So as Mark finally enters the office, we watch him walk down these walls and he's taking all these left turns, right turns, left turns. And obviously these walls are meant to confuse you and make you feel like it's a maze. So when I was researching for the show, the set production designer said that they tested 28 different whites to try and find the perfect white for the show. So this includes the maze walls. It's pretty obvious the maze walls are supposed to make you feel confused, but what it really does well is make you feel trapped. It takes Mark so long to get from his entrance just to his office that it subtly conveys this idea that escape is impossible. Trying to find your way back towards the exit is going to take longer than it even took to get to his office. So the maze walls really spotlight this effect that you never know what's around the corner, because when you're in a maze, you don't know how to get out. You don't know where you're going. So not only does it feel impossible to escape, it also adds this tension because you don't know what might be lurking around the next turn. What's so interesting, and I did not catch this on my first watch through, I observed it as I was researching for this video, but the walls start out really narrow. So it's only one person fitting to walk down the hallway. But as you pursue further down the hallways, they slowly get wider. And this is so subtle and so genius in its effect. By expanding the hallway as you walk further into the unknown, it represents this idea of lumen's expansiveness. You actually don't really know what's going on. It's even bigger than yourself. It really represents this idea that navigating to a destination or conclusion is nearly impossible because of how big lumen is and how expansive it all is. I really believe the most powerful messages come from the most simple representations. But it's so cool because the most simple representations are often the ones that take the most time and thought and intention. I am so passionate about this show. Like, I am just floored with how well done it is. I just have such an appreciation for their art and their creativity. It's really phenomenal. Another thing to observe as you move through the different settings of the show is the era that this is set in is supposed to be unknown. So we have cars that maybe look like they're from the 70s or 80s, but the dress that people wear, even at work or in Mark's outside life, is really neutral. You can't really tell. It could be from the 70s. It could be from the early 2000s. So the technology even, it's really unclear the technology, what era we're set in. So even when I was researching, they talked about making the computers look and represent like computers, but they're not quite full computers. So even that, there's all of these like nods to different eras. The office, clearly some of the furniture looks like it's from the 40s or 50s, but the desk that they made in the middle is completely out of their own creation. So you really, again, it's to make you feel really confused. You don't even know what era this is set in. You're not supposed to know. It's supposed to represent this larger narrative of you being in the unknown and being forced to be in the unknown. It's Lumen's way of further detaching you from reality because you don't know what time setting you're actually in. It really underscores how little we know and how much we have yet to find out. Coffee break. Do you think it's appropriate that my cat is bathing herself in public on YouTube? I'm not sure. Leave a comment. Everywhere you look, there's precision in the setting. Even Mark's townhome that's provided by Lumen represents this idea. When things are so exact, your immediate reflex is to think, well, what's wrong? Nothing in life is ever that precise. So when things are set up in a way that conveys perfection, we are automatically meant to question it, which is exactly what the writers want. They want us to be confused and question the show. They want us to try and figure out what's actually going on at Lumen, but they also want us to feel empathy for the characters who feel equally confused. Their whole life is severed, so this any personality is so out of touch with what's going on in the outside world. as are we. We have no clue what's actually going on with Lumen or what's actually going on behind the scenes. It's brilliantly constructed because not only are you on the edge of your seat as a viewer, but you're building empathy and advocating for the characters as they move through the show. You'll notice too how angular the spaces are and the items in those spaces as well. The angularity represents hardness and rigidity. It's not supposed to be open and welcoming. It brings forth this idea that there is a seriousness to this workplace and a seriousness to the work being done here. We just don't know what it is. Something very obvious that you'll also observe throughout all of the settings in the Lumen building is the minimalistic aspect of it. It's very barren. But as always in TV shows and movies, it's intentional. It is meant to be that minimal. That bareness accentuates the off-putting nature of the setting. By making the office space bare and minimal, it conveys to the workers that the only thing that they should be doing is work there. They should not be distracted. They should not be asking questions. Their job is to come there and do their work. The less distractions available, the less the employees will begin to question the Lumen Corporation.
Am I trapped here?
In what way?
Like if it turns out I hate this and I want to quit, is that an option?
It almost conveys to the employees that they're just cattle, meant to be there to provide a service and be none the wiser to their actual purpose. So the setting is entirely generic too. All the products created are Lumen-oriented products. So I already talked about how the uncanny valley of the office warps our perception of reality, but the genericness of the products and items in this space really underscores the lifelessness of the office. By making all of the products Lumen generic products, it only furthers the disconnection from the outside world. You are only supposed to eat, breathe, and think Lumen. The company really wants to enforce from every angle that the employees should be entirely consumed with Lumen, only thinking about Lumen, not their outside world and not what's actually going on behind the scenes. The wellness room, however, really further contributes to this idea of false reality. There's a humidifier going to make you think that the plants and the sounds of nature are all real. One of our most grounding commodities for human beings is nature. It really helps us stay intact with reality. By Lumen trying to portray nature, their hope is to allow their employees to feel like Lumen is their reality, that this is reality. It is only there to further prevent individuals from questioning about their outside life. It's a really great yet subtle brainwashing technique. And it's seen again when they go to this perpetuity wing and there's a display of all these weird smiles on the wall. And the idea, again, it's very dystopian. It's meant to convey to its employees, you're doing something meaningful. Everybody on the outside is actually really happy and you're doing really, really good work. Just by putting up pictures of people smiling, it's meant to brainwash them. It's meant to force them to not question the narrative that's actually going on. One of the cooler things that I really appreciated about the setting was the uniqueness of their cubicles. So when I was watching this and doing some research for the set production, he said he specifically designed this to be reminiscent of cubicles and of office desks, but to be something new entirely. So you get this really, really cool aerial shot of the desks. And when you get this shot, it looked to me like a windmill. And so this is my far-reaching theory that I think maybe has some weight to it, but also it's just a theory. But if you think about George Orwell, he wrote 1984 and Animal Farm. In Animal Farm, there is a giant windmill that represents and symbolizes the totalitarianism of the pigs. So that's a really, really important feature in the book. And I think the windmill in the show could be a representation of the totalitarianism of Lumen and its founding father, who they talk about a lot in the show. So I think it's a subtle nod to maybe this larger narrative that's going on, which is like the control and the desire to have complete submission from its employees. And like I said, not only did George Orwell write Animal Farm, but he also wrote 1984, which is a dystopian novel that has themes around surveillance and oppressive regimes, which I didn't even mention this, but the entire show, all of the workers at Lumen are clearly obviously under surveillance because they don't want them going in places they shouldn't or asking questions they shouldn't. So I don't think that that's a too far of a theory to throw out there, but I understand if people are like, that's not even close. So take that as you will. So as you can see, the setting for Severance is intentional and so masterful in the way that it's done. Constantly there are images that are making you feel on edge, or nods to themes throughout the show, or constantly pushing towards a larger narrative of control and being submissive. So I loved analyzing this. I just got a kick out of how much intentionality went into it, and how dedicated they are to making their watchers feel a particular way. And I think they did it so well too, in the sense that like, you're not on this emotional roller coaster when you're watching the show. Like, it's intense and you're rooting for the characters, but you're not pulled in 18 different directions. You're really meant to feel a core specific amount of things, and they stick to those things, and they stick to what they know they want to get out of the show. So it's beautiful. It's so fun to watch. One of the greatest cliffhangers that I have ever watched in TV history, in season 1. So I'm thrilled and excited to watch season 2. And if this interested you, like, leave a comment for something else, some other TV show that I can analyze a specific theme out of, because I really enjoyed doing this episode today. So thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you love Severance as much as I do. And I really appreciate all of you for watching. All 43 of you that are subscribed. Thank you so much. I hope I get some more subscribers after this. But seriously, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a good weekend. I've got a kitty. I've got a kitty. I've got a kitty, 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 kitty.